Chapter 35, Episode 35, Full Moon 2. The content of the Legend of Heroes series grew in scale for every succeeding work. In the first episode of the series, there are a total of 5 playable characters. The stage of the story was also limited to a small country located between the Len Kingdom and the Argon Empire. The Queen of the Paragon Kingdom was brainwashed by the demon followers and summons a demon by offering a prince as a sacrifice. The summoned demon, Demon Prince Bakeisel, kills the king and turns the entire palace into a demon's den. The story of Legend of Heroes 1 was about becoming one of the 5 main characters and defeating Bakeisel, who took over the Paragon Kingdom. The story of the second episode takes place in the Len Kingdom and Argon Empire. The story of the third episode takes place in a world devastated by Armageddon and is about settling the fight between the angels and demons. Inside one of the rattling carriages, Jude and Cordelia were laying side by side on a temporarily made bed as the 2 carriages headed to the Northern Viscount's mansion. They weren't lying on the same bed, but on 2 beds with a low partition in between. The 2 carriages were prepared in a hurry by Lucas for their group after they wandered through the witch's forest. Landius of the Red Flame. He is one of the 5 main characters in the first episode. Landius, along with Sword Noble Camille, are considered to be the de facto main characters of the episode. He is the son of the Paragon Knight's commander, and after defeating Bakeisel, he is wandering around the continent looking for the demon followers who were behind everything. Good job, Jude Wiki. As Cordelia clapped and applauded like an idiot, Jude was somewhat embarrassed but continued his words. First of all, depending on which character you played in the first episode, the hero was different, so based on the game's history, it was either Landius or Camille who defeated Bakeisel. Search Camille, enter. Cordelia spoke, pretending to type in the air, and Jude narrowed his eyes, but soon opened his mouth again. Camille the Sword Noble. He is the illegitimate son of King Paragon who was murdered by Bakeisel. He is a main protagonist of the first episode, and is the only one who survived and is active in the second episode. If the main characters of the first episode, who have already become stronger, played an active part in the second episode, it would be difficult for the main characters of the second episode to stand out. Perhaps because of this, the 5 main characters of the first episode all met a miserable end in the second episode. Landius was killed by a demonic human, right? Yes, it's a story that doesn't actually appear and only exists as a setting, but he was killed by demonic human Duke, the chief executive of the Devil's Hand. In fact, the context of this situation was not perfectly revealed in the series. It was a guess made by the users because demonic human Duke carried Landius' sword, the Solar Blade. So you're saying that he's not dead yet? Yes, that's exactly the important thing. Landius is not dead yet. In the original story, Landius meeting with either Jude or Cordelia was something that did not exist. However, the 2 had crushed the Devil's Hand's kidnapping plot, causing the current situation to happen. Lucas was not kidnapped, and Count H.R. Svelger asked Landius, who had ties to them, to pick up Lucas from the Northern Viscount's place. Thus, the encounter between the main characters of the first and second episodes, which was not originally possible, was about to be realized. Can we save him? Cordelia raised her upper body and turned to Jude, as she asked with expectant eyes. Save Landius. Prevent the death of the physically strongest main character in the first episode, and make him active in the second episode. We can save him. No, we must save him. After all, the goal of Jude and Cordelia was to create the ultimate, happy ending. There was also a fact that having a strong man alive like Landius could be a disaster for the demon followers. So we must save him. We had to somehow create the Landius survival route with our upcoming meeting with him. Awesome. Cordelia spoke quietly as she lied down again and smiled. I wanted to save Landius. Do you like him? Yes, he's my second favorite character among the main characters in the first episode. Who was your most favorite, Lena? Yes, Lena. She was the wizard lady and the only woman among the 5 main characters of the first episode. Lena was a disciple of the Paragon Kingdom's royal wizard, and she also faced a miserable end in the second episode. Can we save Lena too? We can save her. It was relatively clear when and where Lena dies. He had not talked to Cordelia about it in detail yet, but Jude already had a rough plan on how to save Lena. Because there's so much work to be done in the north. The sunflower event for curing his Gunjalmeek. The perfect blockage of Jude's main scenario, the northern barbarians' great attack. The rescue of Lena, one of the main characters in the first series. And at this moment, the mission called Saving the Life of Landius was added. Since Landius is strong, just telling him his weaknesses will dramatically increase his chances of survival. That's highly likely. Jude replied and nodded. He then turned to Cordelia in silence, and she tilted her head in confusion. Why? No, it's just that your enthusiasm is vastly different from when you were about to meet Lucas. That's because Landius is cool. Is Lucas not cool? How should I say it? He's a cute one. You don't seem to hate him anymore. Because he's cute. Should I say that he's like a puppy? At Cordelia's evaluation, Jude wryly smiled, and then turned his gaze back to the ceiling. But this time, Cordelia sat up again, tilted her head in curiosity as she turned to Jude and asked. Well, Jude. Why? Can I ask you a question? Cordelia lightly assumed an air of cuteness as she asked, and Jude unwittingly flinched at her, suddenly acting cute and charming. Wow, what are you going to ask? No, well, it's not a big deal. As the end of her words became a little unclear, Cordelia leaned against the partition and spoke. Well, I mean. You mean what? So, darn it, hey, what did you do? What did you do? Outboxer's job, your previous job. You couldn't have been a real boxer. Cordelia, who had been agonizing over how to say it, gave up thinking and almost shouted. Why are you suddenly asking about my job? Something's weird. No, I'm also curious. Cordelia straightened her sitting position as she continued, while pointing her finger at him. First of all, your memory is ridiculously good. Maybe it's yours that's just bad. Hey, grab 100 people passing by and ask whether I'm the one who's normal or you are. Cordelia snorted as she continued, pointing her finger. You said that the soil has changed while we're walking, but where can you find a person that notices that the soil has changed, unless you're paranoid and check the soil when entering the forest? He is that person. Would you please stop talking? Yes, so what else? From the very idea of scamming and the tremendous forgery skills, and even telling lies skillfully, without displaying any nervousness, it's not normal no matter how I think about it. Cordelia nodded as she was intoxicated by her own words, and said again, while she looked straight into Jude's eyes. It was a previous life anyway, so it's okay. I completely understand. Then were you a scammer, am I right? No, it's not. I was an exemplary citizen who paid taxes well, even local taxes, national pension and health insurance. Local tax, health insurance. Why did you not pay? You are. No, I know about it too. I mean, I paid it too. Cordelia quickly answered as she clenched her fist and tapped on the partition. Whatever, what if you weren't a scammer? Then what? Tell me, okay? What is with this cute act? Come on. Or F***CK. Jude unintentionally cursed as he recoiled and retreated, but Cordelia brought her face closer to Jude. And Jude involuntarily broke into a cold sweat. Because Cordelia was an incomparably beautiful girl. Her cute act had a destructive power beyond imagination. Woo, I can't help it then. Wow, are you finally telling me? I am. You are. I used to be a spy until. Cordelia became wide-eyed at him, suddenly speaking in the English language, blinked in surprise, and then asked back. Spy, undercover agent. Jude did not answer and just looked at Cordelia, and she exclaimed, and nodded. That's impossible. He was similar to the main character of the spy drama that she watched before. Excellent acting skills to hide their disguise and identity. Trained forgery skills for the sake of forging various documents. Excellent memorization, concentration, observation, and so on. When Cordelia was finally convinced as her eyes shined, Jude stifled his laugh but soon burst into laughter. What spy? Hey, no, so don't have such a strange delusion. F***ck, then what really was your job? Then what's yours? Huh. You, what about yours? Isn't this give and take? If you tell me first, I'll let you know mine. That's so mean. Hey, isn't it mean to just ask me, but not let me know yours too? **T. Jude's logic was right, but Cordelia didn't want to talk about herself. I might have to call him Oppa. I don't know what Jude's job is, but it seemed like he was older than me. We can let it pass now that we've reincarnated with a similar age, and that we don't know each other's past, but once we talk about it and express it clearly, the atmosphere between us would become strange. Cordelia pouted as she lied down and said again, You know what, can you just tell me one thing then? You just can't tell me your job. Not that, your memory. My memory? Yes, your memory. It really doesn't make sense to me, just teach me that. How did you do it? When Cordelia stuck her face out of the partition again and asked, Jude frowned a little and then nodded. Okay, I'll teach you that. Oh, is this something secret? Cordelia stuck her head out even more in her excitement. Jude was struck by Cordelia's hair spilling over his head, so he moved over to the side. There are two things. What is it? First of all, I'm highly intelligent. F***ck. What kind of secret is that? Cordelia impulsively curs no, that was just her saying an interjection, but she did not deny Jude's statement. She already knew that Jude was smart from the time when he was still outboxer. And do you know of the Memory Palace? Memory Palace, I know that, that's the one Sherlock used, right? Yes, it's a mnemonic system that has been passed down since ancient Greece. The Memory Palace. It was a method developed in the ancient times when the means of recording was trivial. It is a mnemonic system where one imagines a virtual space and store memories in the places they have walked step by step. So when one needs to remember a certain memory, they walk through that place to remember it. Here's another definition of it. The Memory Palace, aka the method of loci, is a method of memorizing information by placing each item to be remembered at a point along an imaginary journey. The information can then be recalled in a specific order by retracing the same route through the imaginary journey. And regarding Sherlock Holmes, the Memory Palace was only mentioned in the BBC's 2010 TV series, Sherlock, and not in the original novels written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Source: Method of loci. The ancient Greek philosophers said that they memorized the content of speeches or books through the Memory Palace. It was a technique that seemed like a superpower at first glance, but it was a skill that ordinary people could acquire through training. Of course, there are individual differences, and I belong to the special cases, but for the present, I'm using the Memory Palace. Wow, then, are you putting it in something like a library in your head, just like what Sherlock did? It's similar, but mine is a bit old-fashioned. Amazing. Cordelia looked at Jude with pure admiration, and Jude cleared his throat as he was somewhat embarrassed. Do you want me to teach you? Really, can I do it too? Although repetitive learning is necessary, and Cordelia must be smart. Well, of course, hey, Yellowstorm is smart too. If you say so. It was when Jude laughed a little. Kaya. At that moment, the carriage shook and rattled greatly. Cordelia, who was leaning over the partition, lost her balance and fell on top of Jude. Hey, are you okay? Ah, yes. At the time, Cordelia's head fell on top of Jude's chest, and she responded with a groan. You're both fine, you're all right, have a good time. Lucas had quickly opened the carriage door to check on them after the carriage shook, but soon retreated and closed the door with a red face. Jude and Cordelia sighed, instead of getting angry. How do I say it, wasn't there a scene like this in novels or manhwas, comics? Yeah, I know. The two sat up and lay down on their respective beds again, and the carriage continued to shake. More than an hour passed like that. The carriage finally arrived at the Northern Viscount's mansion. Chapter 36, Episode 36, Full Moon 3. I am glad to greet you again, Northern Viscount. Oh, I heard the story on what happened at Langesthay. I'm really glad to see you safe. Thank you for your concern. Let me introduce you to my companions, Mr. Jude Bayer from Count Bayer and Lady Cordelia from Count Chase. With the introduction of Lucas, the old and white-haired Northern Viscount turned to Jude and Cordelia, and the two bowed and greeted in respect. Mr. Jude Bayer greets the Northern Viscount. Lady Cordelia Chase greets the Northern Viscount. Oh, the two of you are a good-looking couple, as I've heard. I am the Northern Viscount. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for your generous welcome. Even though Jude, Cordelia, and Lucas were children of the 12 Northern families, they were still nothing but ordinary nobles who did not possess any titles yet. So it was natural for them to show respect to the Northern Viscount, who is their senior and possessed a noble title. The atmosphere of the mansion is very nice. Cordelia spoke as she looked around the old but not worn-down mansion that was well maintained, and the Northern Viscount replied with a smile. It's a mansion that has existed for 3 generations. It's small and old, but it's a precious place where I was born and raised. The Northern Viscount responded warmly to Cordelia and did not dilly-dally any longer, as he ordered the maids to assign each of them a guest room. Do you think he's a good person? He doesn't look like a bad person, I think. In the original story, the Northern Viscount was a person who was mentioned only once, so Jude and Cordelia knew very little about him. They couldn't fully investigate the Northern Viscount's background because they were both stuck in the carriage throughout the journey. Well, I'm sure there would be no problems. Although the Viscount said that it was small, it was only small when compared to the mansion of counts, and the mansion itself was not really small. Like the mansion of a nobleman with a manor, it had several guest rooms. Having been assigned rooms on the 2nd floor, they then had dinner with the Northern Viscount and went back to their respective rooms early to get some rest. And in the balcony of the guest room, Jude and Cordelia began to have their alone time together as usual. Ah, it's nice. After a long time, I could finally eat delicious food, take a good bath, and sleep in a proper bed. Cordelia, who was wearing a nightgown, mumbled as she hummed and stroked her hair flowing down over her shoulders. Her hair was very shiny after she had finished her bath. Well, I did like the bathroom. It's great, but do you really have to say it that way? Moving on. The two sat next to each other on the balcony chair as they looked up at the night sky. They saw the usual 2 moons shining with the stars. Jude was the first to start the conversation. I think Landius will arrive tomorrow. He will be with us for a while. Would it be enough to tell him to be careful with Duke? First, we have to give him some hints about Duke's weaknesses and attack styles. Once he knows that, Landius Gavriel will remember about our usefulness whenever he thinks of us. Should we become intimately acquainted with Landius first then? That way, he'll be able to trust in our words, and we can deliver more information to him. You're probably right. The best situation was for Landius to not fight with Duke at all. Can we get him to travel with us together? Landius is a wandering warrior. He's not affiliated with the Guardians of the Holy Cross like Camille. You're right, but well, we have to try first. If they could get Landius to travel with them, they'd be able to solve more easily most of the events that would happen in the north. But it won't be easy. Landius was chasing a demon follower after the fall of the Paragon Kingdom. To be exact, he was chasing after the Archbishop Manuela, who had deceived the Queen of Paragon to summon Bakezel. Since Landius had a clear goal, it was close to impossible for them to make him give up his chase and everything else just to follow Jude and Cordelia. Well, we'll figure it out once we meet him. You're right, since the 2nd episode takes place 10 years after the 1st episode, Landius must have changed a lot, right? He must have changed. I think he'll be in his 20s to 30s. Camel covers his bare face with a mask, but their faces should be the same. It gets me curious, though. Legend of Heroes 1's main characters, Landius and Camel, were both outstandingly handsome guys. Camel was an incomparably handsome young man with a neutral beauty like Jude, while Landius was an orthodox good-looking guy with bold and intense facial lines like that of Maximilian, the main character of Legend of Heroes 2. The 2nd episode takes place 10 years after the 1st episode. Camel becomes an executive of the Guardians of the Holy Cross and fights against numerous demons. In the midst of that, he became addicted to the demon's power itself and his appearance changed quite a bit. Surprisingly, though, there were many fans who preferred his appearance in the second episode. Was it because it added a beauty of corruption to him? Jude scratched his chin as he turned his thoughts to Landius again. Well, it's something to look forward to. Even when Camille and all the protagonists of the first episode fell into despair in front of the mighty power of Bakehazel, Landius was the man who obstinately stood up and gave everyone hope. In fact, Jude also liked Landius because he didn't talk very much. His heart was thrilled at the thought of meeting the real-life Landius. We'll meet him tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, right? I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Jude responded with a nod and stood up as he said. We'll be having a difficult time anyway, so let's get some sleep for tonight at least. Oh, okay, good night to you too. Dream of me. Yes, I'll dream of you. I'll have a risque dream. What is this crazy B***starred saying? Cordelia left the balcony after their usual banter, and Jude looked back at the night sky. It was a much brighter moonlit night than usual. It was a deep night that was nearing dawn when Jude opened his eyes. The reason he suddenly opened his eyes was simple. Boom! Jude woke up to the sound of an explosion and sprang up from the bed as he looked out the window where he heard the sound. The windows were broken thanks to the traps he had habitually installed earlier, which was triggered when an intruder came in. That intruder was a black-masked man that was now groaning and bleeding on the balcony. It was an attack. At that moment, one thing came into Jude's mind. Cordelia. The moment he equipped the knuckles on his bedside, 2 more masked men appeared on the balcony. And Jude realized it. The Devil's Hand. The ones who failed in Langesthay attempted to attack them once again. Though this was quite troublesome. The fact that they've attacked Jude's group, even though they knew how much power Jude's side has, could only mean that they've sent enough troops to handle it. I was complacent. He thought that they wouldn't attempt a second attack because they had suffered a lot of damage in Langesthay. Each of the 2 masked combatants held a small knife. Behind them, another masked man showed up. I have to avoid them. It was a bad idea to deal with these people when he had no idea how many they were. He had to hurry up and join Cordelia first to ensure her safety. And at that very moment, Jude! The door exploded as a thunderous sound echoed into the air. And what appeared after was an incomparably beautiful girl. No, it was a witch with a fluttering blackish red hair, dressed in a nightgown. Get out of here. The moment Cordelia yelled at the masked people, 2 magic missiles quickly flew and hit the masked people. Jude, come on. He wanted to save her but ended up as the one being saved. However, the important thing was that they have joined up and are now together. Jude hastily ran from the bed as he asked Cordelia. What about Dahlia? On the first floor, the knights said that they were having a drink together. That was certainly possible. But the moment he heard Cordelia, Jude suddenly thought. A trap. If you think about it, they were knights on an escort mission. It was unreasonable for such knights like Dahlia and Jun to go drinking with a glass or 2 in someone else's mansion, even more when one considers the character of Sir Sion, the leader of Count H.R. Svelga's escort knights. This could not have happened if, perhaps, the Northern Viscount did not offer them drinks first. If so, there was one possibility. The Northern Viscount himself trapped them. It may be the Northern Viscount's own work, or some of his servants, but there definitely is someone who is in touch with the Devil's Hand. Let's go quickly. Go to the first floor. To save Dahlia. Let's find Lucas before that. It was Lucas and Cordelia that the Devil's Hand were after. Jude rushed out into the hallway, and Cordelia followed and asked. But what was that explosion? What? That sound of explosion. She was asking about the sound of explosion in Jude's room. Jude shouted as he kicked on Lucas' door. It's a trap. I installed it on the windows every day. Were you really a spy? No. Hey, there's no one. Lucas' room was empty. But they didn't see any signs of an intrusion. The first floor. Could it be that he slipped in the night's drinking party? Or he went to the toilet? It didn't take him long to think, because they heard the sounds of fighting coming from the first floor. Let's hurry. Magic missile. At the moment Cordelia shouted, 5 magic missiles simultaneously formed and flew through the hallway. It headed towards the Devil's Hand's combatants, who had infiltrated through the window of Jude's room. You turned off the witch transformation. I can't use it for a long time. He understood then. Jude took the lead and started running, and they found their party on the side of the central staircase. Dahlia, Jun. Miss. Young master. Dahlia and Jun answered at the same time. However, there were only the 2 of them and some knights. The other knights, such as Sir Sion and Dame Thillian, and above all Lucas, were not visible. Where's Lucas? Outside. That was the end of their conversation. More than a dozen combatants of the Devil's Hand poured in from all sides of the first floor and attacked the knights, and on the second floor, combatants attacked and aimed at Jude and Cordelia. It was clear that at least dozens of combatants were mobilized for this attack. Cordelia, hold on to me. Jude held Cordelia by her waist in a hurry as he kicked the ground and jumped down from the central staircase. And Cordelia hugged Jude's neck, but instead of screaming and going Kaya, she stared at the back and fired magic missiles in succession. Boom, booms, boom. Thud. The sound of the magic missiles exploding and the noise of Jude landing on the floor erupted simultaneously. Jude carried Cordelia and kicked the ground once again. Outside. Fire arrow. Cordelia, who was still in Jude's arms, formed a huge flame arrow. The knights perfectly understood Jude's command and formed a wedge-type formation with the 2 in the center as they rushed towards the central entrance. Boom! The fire arrow fired by Cordelia destroyed the front door and burned it. At the same time, arrows poured out from all sides. Shield. Count Chase's ring activated immediately. A translucent hemisphere wrapped around Jude and Cordelia, and the knights swung their swords in response to the rain of arrows. But it was impossible to stop all the arrows. Several arrows pierced the arms and shoulders of the knights. Dahlia. Outside. Cordelia screamed when she saw Dahlia with an arrow in her left thigh, but Dahlia promptly replied and moved forward. They had to get out of the mansion first before the next rain of arrows poured down. Valiant charge. Jun's body was suddenly enveloped in a subtle golden light when he shouted loudly. He then charged like a bullet towards the front door. It was chivalry, the magic of the knights. Papa papa papa. Arrows rained down on Jun, who fiercely advanced, but the golden light caused most of the arrows to bounce or deflect. However, there were limitations. Jun, who had charged forward, collapsed and fell down. And Jude could see the outside. Lucas and his party were besieged and fighting against the combatants of the Devil's Hand. Lucas. After passing through the front door, Jude put down Cordelia, and at that moment Cordelia began to chant. She was going to use the witch's spells she learned from the witch's spell book. The knights who went through the front door in succession set up a formation to protect Jude and Cordelia, and a shout was heard from Lucas. Mr. Bayer. The enemy is the Northern Viscount. At the time that Sir Sion shouted. Within a short moment, powerful magic flowed through the entire place in front of the main entrance. Among those in this place, it was Jude who instantly recognized the familiar magic, while Cordelia was still in the middle of chanting. Magic circle. It was similar. Just as Jude had prepared a magic circle in advance to fight against demonic human Minos, the Devil's Hand also prepared a trap. The light of the magic circle rose. The purple lines seemed to be intricately drawn on the place, and it soon began to suppress everyone, including Jude. It was as if gravity had become several times stronger. Heavy suppression. As the name suggests, it was a magic circle that suppresses a group of people through the heavy pressure of gravity. Cordelia, who was chanting the spell, fell down and screamed at the sudden pressure. The knights fell into a crooked posture as they were unable to move. Ha ha ha, you fools. As Jude turned his gaze after hearing the stereotypical villain lines, the one who was hiding on the garden grounds finally appeared. It was the Northern Viscount. His face had a distorted look, as if his good face earlier had been a mask, and his eyes glowed red. It's over, even if you break through the prepared heavy suppression, there is no hope for you. When the Northern Viscount spoke in theatrics and waved his hand, combatants of the Devil's Hand appeared not only in the garden, but also in the mansion. At first glance, they numbered over 30. Moreover, there weren't just ordinary combatants. We still can't let down our vigilance against them, because they're the ones who killed Minos, even if it was by chance. A new demonic human emerged on the side of the Northern Viscount. Unlike the Northern Viscount, who was only mentioned once, this new demonic human was a villain whose presence was revealed at the beginning of the original story. Demonic human Varus. In the Devil's Hand, he was a demonic human equal to Minos. He was the demonic human in charge of transporting the kidnapped children of the 12 families to the ritual site. As opposed to Minos, who used ice, he was a demonic human who used hellfire. Jude! Cordelia groaned as she quietly spoke. There were 2 demonic humans, and the combatants were close to 40, so even if there was no heavy suppression, they were all tough enemies to deal with. I believed in the original story too much. Jude didn't think that the Northern Viscount was a demonic human. He also viewed the possibility of a second attack as too low. But it was all belated regrets. They had to first overcome their current crisis. I just need the children of the 12 families, kill all the knights. The combatants ordered by Varus stepped into the magic circle. Thanks to the special engraving on their bodies, they were able to move freely in the heavy suppression magic circle. Jude! Cordelia called Jude again. And at that point, Jude realized what Cordelia wanted to do. Make the witch's power run out of control. It was for a short time, but the released tremendous power would be enough to destroy the heavy suppression. But her method was close to self-destruction. There were still a lot of enemies even if they destroyed the heavy suppression, and more importantly, Cordelia would fall into a state of near death. Jude saw Cordelia, and Cordelia helplessly grinned. She closed her eyes and began to draw out the witch's power. Jude instinctively reached out to stop Cordelia. Because Jude knew there was no way to overcome their current crisis. The fact that Cordelia's chosen method was the only solution she could offer to resolve their current crisis, even though she knew the consequences. But suppose that, even if we're so even so. As Jude was thinking, that suddenly happened. Bangs, boom, boom, boom. The terrifying and huge loud sound reverberated and instantly erased all the sounds in their surroundings. No, Cordelia's power did not run out of control. Even Cordelia, who was in the midst of drawing out the witch's power, opened her eyes in astonishment, and she saw the current scene. The scene of the night sky being torn. The scene of a red flash cutting through the darkness. What is that? The moment she unconsciously spoke. Bowing. A thunderbolt struck from the sky. A red flash came to the ground like a lightning bolt. Boom! The shockwave struck both the heavens and earth. A strong wind rose and pushed away the surrounding air. And the one who stood at the center of it all. A person with bright red hair. He was a man shining like the sun in the dark. Red Flame Landius. The warrior of the sun who never succumbs to any despair. However, Jude and Cordelia were puzzled by his appearance. It was not because of his dramatic entrance like those in the movies. Lalandius. 10 years after Legend of Heroes 1. His changed appearance that no one knew because he didn't even appear in the second episode. Landius was originally tall. He was close to a gigantic 190 cm. But now he was bigger than that. No, even if he was big, he was too big now. To put the case very mildly, he had become close to 2.3 meters without any difficulty. Landius' body was in good shape. He originally had a good body with broad shoulders that the players gave him the nickname Captain Paragon. But now his body was good, or more like, it was too good. Even if he had broad shoulders, it was too broad now. Even though he had hard muscles, it was too hard now. He was indeed a moving body of steel. He was a gigantic existence. In the midst of this, his face was as handsome as it was in the first episode. His red hair fluttered in the wind like a lion's mane. His face remained the same, but his size almost doubled. Furthermore, he was not holding the solar blade he used in the first episode, but was now barehanded. "Sir Landius!" Lucas cried out, and Landius had a manly smile. Landius loudly laughed as he roughly moved his foot. Thud! That was it. Just a single kick shook the Earth's axis, creating dozens of cracks above the ground. The mana that was forming the heavy suppression, magic circle, was quickly scattered. What happened? When Cordelia spoke, the demonic humans of the Devil's Hand moved. Combatants fired their crossbows at the same time to create a rain of arrows. And Landius saw it all. He struck the sky with his fist. It was like a blast from an explosion. The surrounding air shook with the shock wave centered on Landius' strike and swept away all the flying arrows. "Crazy, die!" Varus exclaimed as he urgently shot a huge fireball. It was hellfire, created with his mana as a demonic human. Landius scornfully laughed at the fireball coming towards him. He shouted out loud as if he didn't need to use his hand. "Break!" His outrageous Kyloaded cry was like the roar of a lion itself. The fireball was extinguished in an instant rather than burning Landius. It wasn't just Varus who was bewildered. Jude and Cordelia, as well as everyone on the mansion grounds, were in shock. His level of strength was truly convincing. Because Landius was the protagonist of the first episode. He was the super strong man who had defeated the demon prince with a human body that has now become stronger over the course of a decade. No way to be like that. At the time when even Jude was confused, Landius finally took a step. He crossed the space with a light step and swung his clenched fists. Bangs, bangs, bang. It burst out. It was not a special martial arts skill. The combatants of the Devil's Hand exploded with his sheer fists. It was the result of the tremendous physical force his fists generated. It broke the sky and cut the ground. In the literal sense. Several punches that Landius exerted turned the 30-something combatants into a handful of blood. He broke the arms and legs of the combatants by force alone, at a level that his violent blows made the air itself collapse. It wasn't much different for the demonic humans. The Northern Viscount completely lost his mind to the overwhelming power, and Landius easily seized him by his neck and decapitated him. Varus, who was out of his wits, also suffered a similar fate. The moment he turned his back to escape, Landius swung his fist. The fearsome air wave did not stop at cutting him into two, but even completely crushed him. "Weak ones, I don't even need to use a sword." Landius mockingly laughed, and Jude and Cordelia thought. What is that? I'm scared. Pleiades was a world of superhumans. Just as the nickname of Yellow Storm was, Human Storm, it was also possible for a strong superhuman to face against hundreds or thousands of people. But even so, there was a limit. It was the difference between the game and reality. There was a difference between seeing in the monitor a warrior cutting dozens of monsters and seeing with his real eyes a person bursting from a punch. Duke killed him. That person. So, isn't it more probable that Duke just picked up the solar blade that Landius threw away? While Jude blinked his eyes in surprise, Landius turned. He first looked at Lucas, before turning his gaze towards Jude and Cordelia. "So?" Landius laughed and began walking, while Cordelia unwittingly grabbed Jude's arm. Jude also hid Cordelia in his back and swallowed nervously. Something's not right. The meeting with Landius that he and Cordelia thought of was different. No, it was also of what they thought Landius looked like. 2 meters and 30 centimeters tall. The giant's shadow, which was several times larger than Jude in size, completely covered Jude and Cordelia. Even though she had never been afraid when she faced against a demonic human, Cordelia's shoulders were now shaking, while Jude's breathing became rough. Landius squinted his eyes as he looked at Jude and Cordelia. He looked at Jude's whole body with a piercing gaze. "You, Chen Mujich." A fierce smile spread on Landius' face. He raised his big hands. And Cordelia responded. Just like when they first met Lysagang, she naturally raised her mana. Jude also flinched as he tried to use the 36 world steps, although late, but he realized then that Cordelia was just right behind his back. Landius' hand then grabbed Jude's shoulder. The aura rising from his whole body scattered Cordelia's mana at once. I'm going to die, Jude unconsciously thought at that moment. Landius opened his mouth and said something that Jude didn't even think of. Be my disciple. Yes. Become my disciple, boy with Chenmujich. Landius of the Red Flame. The warrior of the sun. I will pass on to you the Guchengumon, ninth heaven's 9 doors. Jude looked at Landius with a blank face, and Landius revealed a manly smile. Chapter 37, Episode 37, Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors 1. Terms used in this chapter. Ninth Heaven, this is the highest level layer in heaven in Chinese cosmology. For more information on why the Chinese call it Ninth Heaven, or their fascination for the number 9. Guchengumon. The 9th heaven and 9 doors. This wasn't the first time he had heard of it. I've certainly heard of it before, but where? He was certain that it was not a martial art technique that appeared in the first episode. It was when Jude tried to enter his memory palace out of habit. Oh! Behind him, Cordelia suddenly exclaimed. Jude automatically looked at his back, and Cordelia moved her lips to convey a silent message. He then understood when he read her lips. 3rd episode. That was what Cordelia silently said. Thanks to her, he finally remembered. Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors was a fantasy martial art that appeared in the 3rd episode, or to be more precise, in the last expansion pack of the 3rd episode. It's similar to 9 celestial steps. Its existence was known, but the martial art did not appear in the game. But now, rather than anyone else from the 3rd episode, it was Landius, one of the main characters of the 1st episode, that had spoken of the Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors. Did Landius learn it, sometime in the past 10 years, or perhaps Landius himself created that martial art? Either way, it didn't matter to him for now. Just that it was clear that the Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors was the highest in rank for that martial art skill tree, similar to 9 celestial steps. I'll say it for the last time, boy, be my disciple. With your Chenmujich, you can learn the Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors. At Landius' words, Jude swallowed in excitement. He admitted it. His heart was pounding. Among the numerous rotten waters in Legend of Heroes, there was no one else who had the opportunity to learn and master that fantasy martial art skill, and this fact got him excited. Furthermore, he would become the disciple of the Sun Warrior Landius, his favorite character in the 1st episode. There was no way he'd ever refuse that offer. Hi. Landius smiled in satisfaction as he read the eyes of Jude, and soon, Jude opened his lips. He was about to say that he would become his disciple. But right at that moment... Wait a second. Cordelia unexpectedly raised her voice while pulling Jude's arm. Because of that, everyone's gaze on Jude and Landius turned to Cordelia. Landius looked at her, seemingly wondering what was going on, and Cordelia herself was surprised at her actions and hesitated to open her mouth. It seemed like her voice popped out without her realizing it. That. Tell me, girl. When Landius spoke magnanimously, Cordelia looked at Jude once and soon plucked up her courage as she spoke. That Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors, if he learns it. If he learns. Will Jude get bigger? Everyone went blank at Cordelia's timid question, but soon nodded in understanding. Because Landius was indeed abnormally huge. Even Jude, who just before was thrilled at the thought of becoming Landius' disciple, was startled as he looked at Landius. He was definitely big, extremely big. Landius touched his chin in amusement and asked Cordelia again, who was hiding behind Jude's back. Girl, what is the relationship between you and the boy with Chenmujich? He's my fiancé. Sure enough, it's something worth worrying about. Ma'am, it is a very important question, an important issue. Landius nodded in understanding, and the knights sporadically cleared their throats as everyone's faces, except for Lucas, turned red. Huh, what's wrong with everyone? Young master, for a moment. Immediately after, Sosyeon hastily pulled Lucas' hand. Landius happily gazed at the completely red-faced Jude and Cordelia, and then laughed as he spoke. Don't worry, girl, it's not because of the ninth heaven's 9 doors that I am huge. It's not because of the ninth heaven's 9 doors. Cordelia blinked in surprise as she asked again, and Jude became surprised too as he looked at Landius. Landius in the first episode was definitely around 190 centimeters tall. It was impossible for his growth period to suddenly come back in his late 20s, so it must have been due to some acquired cause. But if it was not due to the ninth heaven's 9 doors, what other reason could it be? I have the blood of giants flowing through my body. I used the ancestral regression technique to draw out the power of my ancestors. Ancestral regression technique. Yes, the ancestral regression technique. It's a technique to awaken the ancestors' physical and spiritual powers sleeping in the blood and regress in a form similar to one's ancestor. At Landius' explanation, the knights had faces expressing that they haven't heard of it, but not for Jude and Cordelia. This is because it was a technique that had appeared several times in Legend of Heroes 2. In the immediate future, Cordelia also wakes up her angelic blood through the ancestral regression technique. That was why the two understood Landius' words. If the blood of the giant had been awakened through the ancestral regression technique, it would indeed make sense that Landius' size had greatly increased. I never thought that the blood of giants flowed in Landius. Although it was a sudden character setting, it was understandable. Landius had an overwhelming physique from the start. That's why, girl, even if the boy with Chimujich learns the ninth heaven's 9 doors, he will not become as big as me, so don't worry. Oh yes, I see. As Cordelia faltered and shut her lips tightly, Landius focused on Jude again. Now answer, boy with Chimujich, will you be my disciple? A fantasy martial art called Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors. A disciple of Landius, one of the main characters of the first episode. It was a very different development from the original story, but there was no reason for him to refuse it. To begin with, Jude's goal was to destroy the original ending and bring about a perfect happy ending. Will you do it? I will do it. Jude exchanged looks with Cordelia before looking up at Landius and finally replied. I will become your disciple, master. Ha, good, you are my disciple from today, so answer my questions, disciple. Yes, master. When Jude responded nervously, Landius asked with a magnanimous face. First of all, what is your name? How old are you? If you have a fiancé, are you a noble? It was the most basic questions. Though they had become master and disciple, they had yet to mutually introduce themselves. With a dazed look on his face for a moment, Jude opened his mouth and answered the questions of his overly considerate master. The next morning, the group had spent the night in the now ownerless mansion of the Northern Viscount. There were opinions that it was still dangerous, but Landius' presence was the answer to all of their concerns. While preparing to leave in a hurry, they also delivered the news to Lanjesthe. The fact that a nobleman with a manor was a demon follower, and even became a demonic human, was a very serious matter. If we go by the standard procedure, we should stay here and cooperate with the investigation, but as there had been 2 attacks already, I think it's for the best to return to the Count as soon as possible. There was a second attack, so there could be a third attack. So it was best to return quickly when Landius was with them. Jude knew that Landius was traveling all over the continent in search of the Archbishop Manuela. Landius only accepted the job this time because he also had to meet and deal with Count H.R. Svelga, so if they got delayed for a long time, he was more likely to leave. Okay, let's do that then. Lucas replied to Sosyeon before enviously looking at the carriage where Jude and Cordelia was in. I'm really envious. He wasn't talking about Jude having a perfect and harmonious teamwork with a fiancée that is an incomparably beautiful girl. It was because of being Landius' disciple. Landius had the personality that Lucas longed for, as his visuals and strength seemed to have been torn from a heroic novel, and that Landius had demanded Jude first to be his disciple. That did not happen when he was with Lucas. Young Master, so Landius martial arts are of a form that cannot be mastered without having a special bodily constitution. It is not because of young Master's lack of talent. Landius himself didn't pay attention to that. If it's only the talent for the sword, young Master is already on par with sword noble Camille. Yes, but... He knew that. But he was still envious of what he highly desired. The training of Sir Landius. The training from the red-haired warrior. While Lucas stared at the carriage, Jude was lying at death's door. Lying on a remodeled bed in the carriage, Jude wriggled his body and let out groans, while Cordelia sat down at the bedside of Jude and took care of him. Does it hurt that much? It hurts F*ck. It F***ing hurts. I really think I'm going to die. It wasn't even like this when I was in Afghanistan. It was unlike the usual Jude, as he uncontrollably kept popping out curses in just one day. No, it wasn't just a day, but from the few hours of training in the middle of the night that made his whole body scream in pain. I have to leave again when we arrive at Count H.R. Svelga. I can't take you with me, so I'll teach you the basics while we go to the Count's territory. It was good so far, he fully understood that. But the training that followed was far beyond Jude's expectations. I didn't learn like this from my father. There was quite a difference from when he learned lightning punch and lightning strike fist. He would react like that because Landius overworked all the muscles of his whole body. It wasn't martial arts training, but some kind of physical training. No, it felt more like physical abuse. Moreover, Landius made him do all possible exercises, or more like continuous abuse, by repeating adequate rest and training that is just right for Jude who didn't have enough physical strength, yet because of his Gumjal meek. So do you know exactly what the ninth heaven's 9 doors is? I don't know, but based on the training, it doesn't strengthen the body itself. F***ck. It F***ing hurts. It hurts even if I stay still. Arg. Don't just say F***ck twice. F***ck. Their positions were reversed from their usual conversation when the door suddenly opened. You look fine, it's Chunmujic indeed. When Landius spoke with a pleased face at the sight of Jude, stretched out on the bed, Jude's soaring anger burst at that moment. Are you saying that I am fine? Fortunately, he still held some degree of reason, so he could only shout in his mind. Landius said as he nodded his head in satisfaction. Let your body rest until lunch. We'll start the training again every time the carriage stops. Girl, feed this to my disciple. Landius took a pouch from his waist and threw it to Cordelia. When she opened the pouch, there were a lot of pills inside that were the size of a thumbnail. Physical no, to be exact, those are pills that helps the muscles recover. From now on, feed those pills at the end of every training session. Do you understand? Yes. All right, then see you at lunch. Landius smiled refreshingly as he closed the door and left, and Cordelia turned to Jude with a face full of concern. Do you want to say first? I'll give you the pills. Tilda. Cordelia had somehow become so eagerly nice to Jude, as she pretty much spoke in a gentle voice, and Jude trembled as he opened his mouth. And those unforgettable hellish days continued to Jude for 5 more days. Zug lug. On the 6th night after meeting Landius, Jude trembled and fell down in place after having finished doing squats. Master. Yes. My legs won't move. You're right, your lower body needs to rest a bit now, so let's train your upper body now. Landius was laughing, ha, as he helped Jude sit in place before handing him his handmade exercise equipment. Be quick, we don't have much time. You need to train your muscles during breaks too. Don't cry, you'll lose the water in your body. As he trembled in various ways, Jude began working out his upper body. And after 2 hours like that, Jude had completely used all of his body muscles as he collapsed while looking out of breath. That's good. Repeat the entire training course even when I'm not here in the future. Okay. Okay. They'll be arriving at Count H.R. Svelga's territory tomorrow. It's liberation, I'll finally be free now. Jude was flushed with tears, and Landius chuckled as he said, Don't be too sad, my disciple. I'm only going to take care of some urgent business before coming back to see your training, so stop those tears or you'll lose the muscles you've gained." Jude trembled instead of answering, and Landius continued his words. "Now then, there's only one day left, so let's start the training for Ninth Heaven's 9 doors." "Yes, what?" Jude asked as he looked up and raised his head, even if his body had collapsed. What Landius said was too absurd. "Start training for Ninth Heaven's 9 doors." So what had he been doing so far? "What is it? It's muscle training. My dear boy, you're too weak even without Gyumjulmeek, so work hard repeatedly to build up your body." Landius clicked his tongue, and Jude had a stunned look as he blinked. Simple muscle training, not training for Ninth Heaven's 9 doors. When he thought about it, he agreed too. The training was so hard that he didn't properly think about it, but in retrospect, it was all pure physical training that had nothing to do with martial arts. It was also true that Jude was weak, even if he didn't have Gyumjulmeek. But even so. Fu***ck. Fortunately again, Jude only shouted in his mind. Landius sat Jude upright as he spoke. "From now on, I will teach you the oral passage of the Ninth Heaven's 9 doors. Learn it by heart. All I have to do is memorize it. For now, yes." At that moment, Jude was mortified as a few tears came out of his eyes, but he decided to endure it for now. He had to learn the Ninth Heaven's 9 doors. Okay, let's get started. The oral passage of the Ninth Heaven's 9 doors. Jude closed his eyes and focused on Landius' voice. A new memory was added to his memory palace. For a while, the oral passage settled down at one point in Jude's head. It then naturally became one with Jude. And only then did Jude realize. Ninth Heaven's 9 doors was not a combat technique that consisted of attack and defense like lightning punch or God's fist. However, it wasn't Inukai cultivation either. Make 9 doors to one's body and soul. Every time a door is opened, new possibilities are unlocked. All of these will lead the body and soul to reach a higher level. It is a soul training method that is a mixture of both martial arts and magic. It makes the soul evolve. Jude felt the location of the bottommost door as the door was created. The first door. It couldn't have been this fast originally. But his Chinmujich made it possible. In the first place, Ninth Heaven's 9 doors itself was one with Chinmujich. It was a martial art that could not be properly learned without having Chinmujich. Sweat poured down from Jude's whole body. He forgot the passage of time, and the first door was finally completed after what felt like an eternity. And at that moment, Jude realized. One of the martial arts that Jude himself had reacted to the Ninth Heaven's 9 doors. It advanced to a higher rank. 36 world steps. Jude's footwork technique. Can he reach the ultimate fantasy footwork technique, 9 celestial steps, by the end? But why? Why does the 36 world steps respond to the Ninth Heaven's 9 doors? The first door opened. The first evolution began in the depths of Jude's body and soul. And at the same time, the 36 world steps took on a new form. 24 Gale steps. Jude opened his eyes and faced Landius. Chapter 38, Episode 38, Ninth Heaven's 9 Doors, 2. I made one change to the previous chapter. Oral passages has been changed to mnemonic chant. The Korean words used had multiple definitions, but mnemonic chant made more sense in this chapter, so I changed it. Juju's do ah. He heard a voice. However, he couldn't hear it properly because it was garbled. Perhaps it was Landius' voice. His sight returned, though it was still blurry, and at that time, he clearly heard an audible voice near him. Jude, are you all right? You okay? Cordelia. His sight became clear the moment he unwittingly spoke. He immediately saw the faces of Cordelia, whose white and pretty face was right in front of him, and Landius, who was looking down at him from a distance. Are you awake? Do you know how many these are? When Jude suddenly spoke, Cordelia flinched, but she soon waved 2 fingers with a joyful face. 2, just like you. What? Cordelia growled, but her eyes seemed to be smiling though. She seemed to be very happy that Jude had woken up. Did it take a long time? Since he began memorizing the mnemonic chant of Ninth Heaven's 9 doors, he no longer felt the passage of time. Judging by Cordelia's reaction though, it looked like a considerable amount of time had passed. You must be fine if you're whispering sweet words with the girl. Clicking his tongue as he grinned, Landius approached him and Cordelia stepped aside. Landius spoke again. It seems to me that you're not yet aware of it, but it's been a day since you began memorizing the mnemonic chant. A day? Yes, a day. It was night when you closed your eyes, but it's still night, right? Jude unthinkingly nodded, before inspecting his body. Maybe because he was now aware of it, he felt that his whole body was weak, and that he was hungry. That's why the girl came. Her fiancé, whom she loved more than her life, has not woken up for the entire day, so she was suffering from a heartache. Isn't that right? That's what Lucas said. No, that's right, yes. Yes, I couldn't do anything because I was worried that my beloved Mr. Bayer hadn't opened his eyes for the whole day. Yes, that's right. When Landius asked with narrowed eyes, both Jude and Cordelia answered quickly. However, Cordelia's answer was a problem, because as always, her acting was monotone. Okay, moving on. Luckily, the magnanimous Landius didn't care about such trivial stuff. Moreover, it was true that Cordelia was here, because she was worried about Jude. Disciple, if my eyes are correct, you seem to have opened the first door. Is that correct? Yes, I think so. Jude carefully answered as he placed his hand over the lower part of his belly. It was the place where the first door was installed. Cordelia just looked at Jude's belly as she thought that nothing had changed, but it was a little different for Landius. He had a feeble smile as he looked dumbfounded, but soon burst out into a hearty laugh. Sure enough indeed, is this the work of Chunmujich? Master, you're fast. It took me over a month to open the first door. But Jude opened the first door in just one day. As expected, was the Chunmujich the divine inspiration of the transcendent beings? Both Jude and Cordelia focused on what Landius muttered. The divine inspiration of the transcendent beings. Those were words that did not exist in both Legend of Heroes first and second episodes. Master, what you called transcendent beings. Yes, you have the qualifications, first. Landius' words slurred at the end of his sentence as his gaze headed to Cordelia, and she flinched and then stood up from her seat. She thought that Landius was reluctant to talk because of her presence. Well, Jude will tell me later about it. But then Jude grabbed Cordelia's hand. Why? Cordelia asked with her eyes, but instead of answering, Jude looked at Landius and said, Master, Lady Cordelia and I are no different from one body. Lady Cordelia also has the right to know about what happened to my body. Please let us hear it together. You're right, my disciple and the girl are engaged, so they're as good as one body. No, it's not. Me and Jude are two different bodies, right? The last thought belonged to Cordelia, but only Jude could guess her thoughts by looking at her eyes. All right, I'll tell the girl the story too. Thank you. Thank you. For a moment, Cordelia was dazed, but expressed her gratitude afterwards, as she quietly sat down next to Jude. Landius began talking after sitting in front of the two. Disciple and girl, do you know anything about the great monarchs of hell? Yes, are you referring to the 5 great demons of hell? When Cordelia said in response, Landius nodded. Yes, the 5 great demons, Asmodeus of lust, Belial of corruption, Belphegor of cruelty, Behemoth of violence, and Lilith of love and hate. But the truth is, the great monarchs of hell were originally 7, not 5. Jude and Cordelia also knew of this story. According to the setting of Legend of Heroes, 2 of the original 7 great monarchs had disappeared, leaving only 5. A long time ago, in what we call the ancient times, 2 of the 7 great monarchs came down to the human world. Numerous human nations were destroyed by the 2 mighty demons, and some races even went extinct. The High Dwarves, the higher race and ancestors of the current dwarves, virtually went extinct, and the elves lost their great empire, which was the most prosperous on the continent. All the races living on the continent joined forces to confront the demons, and after countless sacrifices, they were able to win. They knew of this story up to this point. Ordinary people didn't know it well, but it was a story that was known to some knowledgeable wizards, scholars, and priests. If so, then who was it? Who were the people with transcendental powers that defeated the great monarchs? Landius' gaze turned to the sky. He continued the story as if he was talking to himself, and not to Jude and Cordelia. I was curious about it, because I thought that knowing who and how they defeated the great monarchs would greatly help in the future fight against the demons. Unlike the sword noble Camille, who joined the Guardians of the Holy Cross, Landius wandered all over the continent alone. After a long search, I was able to find a record in the ancient ruins where the Guardians of the Holy Cross first began. It was a record of the heroes who defeated the great monarchs. Jude and Cordelia simultaneously swallowed in their excitement. This was the first time that the two had heard of this story. There were 7 heroes who were neither angels nor demons but possessed divine powers. It was a really impressive formation. The dwarves' strongest warrior, the elven queen, the sun god Solari's champion, the best assassin of the continent, and so on. Each and every one of them was worthy of the title of great hero. And there was one of them that caught the interest of Landius. The transcendent being. The ancient guardians called them a transcendent being, whose name, age, and gender were unknown, and that being used a special martial art. Yes, it's the 9th heaven's 9 doors. Landius' gaze returned to Jude and Cordelia. Only the mnemonic chant remained, and the mnemonic chant wasn't perfect either, but I couldn't give up on the 9th heaven's 9 doors. After having acquired an incomplete mnemonic chant, Landius did not worry alone. Together with his former comrade, the sword noble Camille, they asked for help from their colleagues who defeated demon Prince Bakazel. Each of them began their research and investigation on the 9th heaven's 9 doors and the heroes of the ancient times. The current 9th heaven's 9 doors was restored by Camille, me, and Lena together, and in the process, we concluded that we needed a special talent to fully master the 9th heaven's 9 doors. There was no need to say what it was. Chunmujit, the manifestation of martial arts talent from the heavens. In the last 1,000 years, fewer than 10 have been born with Chunmujit, so I was on the verge of giving up until I met you. That was why Landius told him to become his disciple, even without having introduced themselves first. Jude and Cordelia were thrilled by the story that was much larger than they thought. The two looked at each other, and Cordelia opened her mouth first. Landius, what kind of martial arts is the 9th heaven's 9 doors specifically? It is a martial art that allows the body and soul to rise to a higher level. Well, to put it simply, to become a being that transcends humans, it's a way to become a transcendent being. Jude nodded at Landius' words, because he had felt it during the process of opening the first door. Jude, what changed happened when you opened the first door? It felt like my soul expanded, my body too, I think it got better. The simple story about the soul and such came suddenly, but his body did actually get better. Landius nodded his head. As its name suggests, 9th heaven's 9 doors consists of 9 doors. Every time a door is opened, one becomes closer to the transcendent being, and the body and soul itself are reinforced. Many different abilities also appear as an additional effect. Abilities. Yes, opening the 5th door gave me the ability to see through things. Landius said, and Jude peeked at Cordelia, and she narrowed her eyes. What is it? No, just. Landius cheerfully laughed. It can only be used when the door is opened, and it is very obvious too. When you open the 5th gate, a red energy rises like a flame, so if you use the ability to see through, other people can tell with their eyes. That's too bad. As Jude sighed, Cordelia's eyes narrowed at him. The doors are always open up until the 4th door. From the 5th door and above, the doors are only opened whenever it is necessary. It's because after the 5th door, the burden on the body is so great that it is difficult to maintain it for a long time. It was a convincing story. I have opened up to the 7th door. In fact, I turned towards the ancestral regression technique to get a clue on how to open the 8th door. Landius, who had talked so far, suddenly had a generous smile as he stood up and said, The only one who can open the doors of 9th heaven's 9 doors is the one who has it. That is why there is nothing more that I could teach you about the 9th heaven's 9 doors. I can only give you a bit of advice. Of course, that doesn't mean that I won't be a teacher. what I can teach you about are a lot of things besides the ninth heaven's 9 doors. As he finished his rather long talk, Landius flaunted his muscles to Jude, while Jude unconsciously flinched when he realized what other things Landius could teach. There was silence for some time. Jude soon regained his reason as he likewise stood up and said, "Master, I have something to tell you." "What is it? Do you think you're having muscle loss after sitting around all day?" "No, that's not it. It's about the ninth heaven's 9 doors." In response to the ninth heaven's 9 doors, the 36 world steps had advanced a rank. It's a martial art that I accidentally got from a dungeon book. As Jude talked about the 36 world steps, Landius' eyes became very serious. It responded to the ninth heaven's 9 doors, so perhaps the 36 world steps is also a martial art of the transcendent being that you've mentioned. It was a possible story. 9 celestial steps and ninth heaven's 9 doors. The fantasy martial arts whose existence itself was unclear. "Okay, then tell me more about it." "Yes. The 36 world steps," Landius said in his most excited tone. He really wanted Jude to teach him about it right now. "I understand. It would take some time to tell you both the movement and the mnemonic chant, so I'd like to share a story before that." "What is that?" Jude turned to Cordelia for a moment, rather than answering right away. "Are you going to tell him now?" "Now is the only time to do so." For 6 days, he completely forgot about it because he underwent a hellish physical training, but their original purpose of meeting Landius was not to learn the ninth heaven's 9 doors. Saving the life of Landius. Warning him on how to deal with Duke. The question is, will it be necessary though? Frankly, the current Landius doesn't seem like he'll be killed and die if Duke tries to kill him. But there was still a chance. There was nothing to lose in telling him. This is a story when we met the witch's soul in the witch's forest. After the fairy queen, it was now the witch's soul. What if an ancient witch left a prophecy about Landius? Will he be able to verify it? How would he do it? The witch's soul said that a great danger would befall the sun warrior we would meet in the future. The danger is that there is a high chance of being poisoned by the red scorpion's poison, so they should lay down preventive measures to completely prepare for it. Duke was someone who often uses poison. In particular, the red scorpion's poison that he used was a poison so deadly that even a graze could kill a person. I see, I'll prepare an antidote then." Jude was worried that Landius would just snort, saying that he was not afraid of poison, but Landius unexpectedly accepted Jude's story seriously. "Well, are you done with your story then?" Jude looked at Cordelia at Landius' question, and she swallowed once before raising her hand to ask. "So Landius, may I ask you just one thing?" "Ask, girl." "That didn't you originally use a sword, like the solar blade or something?" One of the reasons why Landius is called the warrior of the sun is because of the solar blade. Landius heartily laughed at Cordelia's question. "I still use it now, I just don't use it to train myself." "Training?" "Yes, Camel said that. When you understand the principles, you can use swordsmanship without a sword." It was the so-called intangible sword, or the heart of the sword, a state which one reaches when their sword art is above a certain level. But isn't it more like Landius is using fist-fighting techniques, now rather than using swordsmanship without a sword? So you don't use a sword?" "I'm testing this and that." Yes." With that, their questions were solved. Given that he talked about the solar blade, the treasured item of the Paragon Kingdom, he seemed to still have it. "So that's it, right?" "Just for now. It would be strange to ask him to show to them the solar blade here." As Jude and Cordelia exchanged glances, Landius smiled as he found them cute, and then he said, That's good then, it looks like the story is over. Now then, 36 No, wait. I was so excited that I forgot something important. I'm still not good enough." Landius abruptly stopped his words and reproached himself, before looking over Jude's whole body and saying, "Eat your meals first, it's focused on protein. Since you haven't eaten all day, let's fill you in with nutrients first, before learning about the 36 world steps. When you starve and lose weight, you lose your muscles before you're fat. Because muscles are precious. At the urging of Landius, Jude began to eat. The menu was chicken breast meat. Chapter 39, Episode 39, Count Hreesvelge. There were 3 protectors in the Len Kingdom. The Knights of the Golden Lion protected the Silates Plains, which has been the biggest battleground against the Argon Empire for generations. The invincible fleet of the 7 southern families dominated the southern waters. And the last one was the Jackdaw Brigade, which blocked the northern barbarians for over the past 300 years. The northern Margrave is the head of the Jackdaw Brigade, and Thunderdoom Fortress is the nest of the Jackdaws. If the Knights of the Golden Lion were the king of pitched battles on the plains, the Jackdaw Brigade were experts in fortress defense. The Jackdaw Brigade have always had 10,000 people at all times, and built numerous legends together with the Thunderdoom Fortress. In the Great Invasion 150 years ago, Black Eagle, the legendary chieftain of the barbarians, led more than 150,000 troops against the 10,000 troops of the fortress. Despite the fact that the enemies were 10 times more than their own troops, the Count Bear of that time not only stopped the overwhelming enemies 7 times, but also made a record of beheading the enemy, Wild Lion. However, Count Bear was killed, and this great invasion was called the Tragedy of the Jackdaws. If you live in the north, always thank the Jackdaws. They are the ones protecting your life, your family, and your loved ones. Those statements weren't wrong, because many northerners do harbor feelings of goodwill and gratitude to the Jackdaw Brigade. And it was when the Count of H.R. Svelge became the Margrave that such feelings of pride and dignity truly reached its peak. Thunderdoom Fortress was not only the nest of the Jackdaws, but was also the place where the Count of H.R. Svelge, the first Jackdaw, lived. The situation feels delicate now that I've come here. Jude himself was a man from the Beyer family. 50 years ago, the head of the Jackdaws was the Count of Beyer. It was a time before the current Count Beyer was born, and only a few people, including the old knight Victor Cromwell, remembered the days when the Beyer family was a jackdaw. Moreover, the former Count Beyer was not so much talented in the sword, which was unlike the current Count Beyer, who was such a powerful swordsman that he ranked among the top 10 swordmasters of the Len Kingdom. The current Count H.R. Svelge was also one of the 10 swordmasters, so it was inevitable that a delicate rivalry relationship was formed between the two. Well, it didn't matter to Jude what the actual thoughts between the two counts were. I only came here because I needed to, and as for Lucas, he is someone who's truly pure of heart. In the first place, it was Lucas who invited him here, and Jude had readily accepted it. Of course, Cordelia was also here because she had clung to her beloved fiancé, insisting that she would follow him. What is it? Why? No, I just suddenly felt like I've lost. Cordelia tilted her head in confusion, sniffing as she replied to Jude, and Jude inwardly admired her. She's Yellow Storm indeed. Her senses were really sharp that she could somehow sense what Jude was thinking of her. Moving on. Jude looked at the front again. The group had not actually arrived at the Thunderdoom Fortress. Lucas and Jude's destination from the very beginning was right here, the trading city of Vedafalnia, located at the entrance of Count H.R. Svelge's territory. Because the Thunderdoom Fortress is literally a fortress, so the Count's mansion couldn't be inside the fortress. Thus, while Count H.R. Svelge almost lived in the Thunderdoom Fortress, his family settled in Vedafalnia, the most developed city in the H.R. Svelge territory. My disciple, I'll be parting with you for a while here. Landius strode over as he said. He was originally on the move to meet Count H.R. Svelge, so he was now going to part with them here and head to the Thunderdoom Fortress. Disciple, don't show your tears. Tears are useless. Because it causes muscle loss. Yes, the time I taught you was short, but you learned really well. That's Chemujic indeed. With a satisfied face, Landius heartily laughed and then patted Jude on his shoulder. But don't worry, I'll meet you again after I've met with Count H.R. Svelge and dealt with some urgent matters. It'll be a few months later when we see each other again. Yes, Master, I look forward to the day of our reunion. Yes, and don't forget to exercise, be healthy and let's meet again. Landius tapped on Jude's shoulder before turning to Cordelia. Girl. Yes, Sir Landius. Please take good care of my disciple and do what I asked you to. Yes, Cordelia modestly answered, and Landius heartily laughed again. Jude had a curious look on his face as he stared at Cordelia. What did he ask you to do? Please replenish him with a protein diet every day. When they had their usual conversation with just their eyes, Landius looked at them happily. What a nice and loving couple, they're indisputably soulmates. I think so too. Lucas, who had been somehow trying to get involved in their conversation, cut in when he got the chance. Unfortunately, the conversation had already reached its end. My disciple, I look forward to seeing you again. May the muscles always be together. Ma master too. Jude awkwardly smiled as he couldn't say the same about muscles being together. Landius heartily laughed again and lowered his posture. Then, disciple, girl, Lucas, and the others, may you be healthy until the day we meet again. Boom! Landius kicked the ground and soared up. A dozen meters, no, he soared at almost tens of meters high, and then he kicked again into the air and became the red flash that they saw on the first day. Boom, booms, boom. They didn't hear it wrong. That was the sound of Landius tearing through the air as he soared up the sky. Hi. They blankly stared at the sky for a few seconds while listening to the faint sound of Landius' laughter. Cordelia was the first to open her mouth. He alone is in a different genre. I agree. Jude strongly agreed as he looked far at the northern sky. You must have accumulated a lot of fatigue from traveling, so take a good rest for today. If there is something you lack or need, please tell us right away. You don't have to feel burdened about it. Thank you, Lord Lucas. Thank you very much. After Lucas guided them directly to the guest rooms, he smiled and left. Jude and Cordelia ate, took a bath, and had a break before having their alone time together as usual. They're surprisingly cooperative. Well, we've already spent so much time alone together, it must be a routine for the knights now. It was at a level where the knights left the two alone now, even though they haven't said anything yet. Moreover, the phenomenon accelerated further after Dahlia returned to Count Chase's territory because of her injury. They didn't have any knights closely attached to them now. Doing that is good, but do you really have to do that now? It'll be over soon, I'll just do one more set. After exercising every day for the past 6 days, it had become awkward for Jude to not continue his daily exercises. Disciple, remember, all the strength of a man comes from a stable and strong lower body. It is already common sense that the circumference of the thigh is directly proportional to one's lifespan. Jude wanted to ask whose common sense was that, but he did agree to the fact that training the lower body was important. Because a person is an animal that stands on the ground with both feet after all. The whole body was stable only when the lower body was stabilized, and the whole body had to be stable in order to move the body properly. It's hot, I'm sweating. Cordelia wrinkled her nose as she spoke. She was making a special juice with the help of wind cutter magic. It was what Landius asked for before he left. But you must have gotten a lot better with your Gumjulmeek. You can now exercise that long. I think the physical part has somehow been solved. It's also thanks to the opening of the first door. After having finished his squatting exercise, Jude took a deep breath and received the juice from Cordelia. Look forward to it. Once my Gumjulmeek is healed, I'll carry you, cross over the wall and care for you. I'll even do all of it as a set. What is this crazy bastard saying? After their usual exchange, the two sat facing each other and started talking seriously. Well, we've come all the way here, so let's organize our future schedule. First of all is our top priority, the sunflower. That's right, because the sunflower will bloom in the next 15 days. As legend has it, the sunflower was a flower that bloomed only once every 20 years and fell on the 3rd day. We have to get the timing right. We'll have to leave in a week at the latest. They had to consider the time to get to Frost Anvil, and the time to travel through all kinds of obstacles to get to the place where the sunflower is located. Eating the sunflower will almost cure my Gumjulmeek. In addition, I can also get my hands on a special constitution. What did you get when you ate it as Jude? I don't know because I haven't eaten it when I played as Jude. It was physically impossible then. Jude's main scenario happens a year later after Cordelia and Lucas. When Jude's scenario began, it was after the sunflower had already wilted. If Cordelia eats it, it will damage her body instead. The Yang energy's extreme energy was like a poison to ordinary humans. You've become a witch, so it's my turn this time. What about the ninth heaven's 9 doors? That's that. I hate you. Jude sneakily laughed at Cordelia's words and said as he raised his palms as if to calm her down. But I'm not going to let it go after all. Just as I got the ninth heaven's 9 doors this time, there's no rule that says that we have to move according to the original story. Cordelia tilted her head at Jude's words, but soon understood it. She spoke with a smile on her face. Ancestral regression technique. If Jude was born with Chinmujich, Cordelia was born with the very strong blood of a high-ranking angel. Therefore, just as Landius acquired the power of a giant through ancestral regression technique, Cordelia could also gain the power of an angel. It's an event that only takes place after the middle part of the original story, but I don't have to wait until then. Exactly, because I'm here. The ancestral regression technique required a very special magic circle and various materials. But the problem of the magic circle could be solved right now. It was proudly stored in Jude's memory. Jude Wiki is the best, it's really convenient. Please use it anytime, ma'am. Jude did an old-fashioned bow like those in plays, and then spoke to Cordelia, who was laughing lightly. But as you know, you have to collect the ingredients first. Do you know the materials necessary for the ancestral regression technique? I have Jude Wiki, so do I have to know? That you're right, but do you know though? I know it, you're talking about that now, right? The most important material that cannot be replaced and varies for each ancestral regression target. That's right. The ancestral regression technique was a ritual to awaken the power of the ancestors hidden in the blood, which is the way to go through the soul. And in order to make the ritual a success, they needed the blood of the target ancestor. Landius must have conducted the ritual with the blood of a giant. Though he had to go to a remote area to find the giants, it wasn't that difficult as he could still meet them. But Cordelia was different. She needed the blood of an angel. Oops, is there any way to get the angel's blood early on? It didn't exist in the original story, but it should still be possible now. That's not our Lena. She is one of the 5 main characters in the first episode of Legend of Heroes, and is the only woman among the main characters. In the original story, Jude or Cordelia never met her, let alone prevent her death. But this time it was different. There were 2 people who planned to meet her in person and save her life. And Lena had the blood of an angel. At the end of the first episode of Legend of Heroes, she was awakened as an angel through the ancestral regression technique. As expected, it's Lena, we must get it by all means. Yes, but we don't even know where she is right now, so we would only be able to get it at the right time period that we know. There have already been many changes due to the butterfly effect, but Lena's death event takes place in the barbaric land beyond the borders. Like the sunflower, it was an event that occurred in conjunction with a special event with a fixed time period, so it was highly likely to proceed as scheduled. Then let's sort them in order. Okay, first of all is the sunflower event. After obtaining the sunflower, we will work on twisting the main scenario, the Northern Barbarians' Great Attack, from its very roots. I think I know what you're thinking. Oh, really? Really? Cordelia was the 2nd place in the server rankings after all. Jude cheerfully laughed and said, Yes, in the middle of our work on the main scenario, we will save Lena and get the angel's blood. Then Jude himself will carry out the ancestral regression technique to awaken Cordelia as an angel. I can't wait for it to happen. When one awakens as an angel, wings made up of light are formed and it becomes possible to fly. Give me a ride when you awaken. What is this crazy bastard saying? What are you talking about? It's moving on. Moving on. Yeah, moving on. In order to do that, we have to first finish the sunflower event well. one of the materials needed for the ancestral regression technique can be found in Frost Anvil. That's killing two birds with one stone. Yes, we achieved two things by just going to Frost Anvil. And as usual, the two then quickly began to make detailed plans for their future schedule. But during the next afternoon, an emergency report from Thunderdoom Fortress threw all their plans into the gutter. Because we've been attacked twice. There had been 2 attacks from the demon followers that aimed at the children of the 12 northern families. What was even more problematic was the fact that only Jude, Cordelia and Lucas were attacked for the second time. Fortunately, Lady Sylvia, Miss Viola, Lord Felix, and Count Dahut's male twins were not attacked. Some of them had already arrived home, like Count Dahut's twins, but there were some who weren't attacked even though they were on the way home, like Sylvia and Felix. And these facts only suggested one thing. The target of the Devil's Hand were the 3 children, Jude, Cordelia and Lucas, or at least one of them. Therefore, Count H.R. Svelga gave a strict order to Lucas when he returned home. Stay quietly at home with the guests. Upon hearing Lucas' entire explanation, Cordelia urgently turned to Jude, who cautiously asked, "Then, Lord Lucas, what about the sunflower?" My father said that he would give a separate order to his subordinates in finding the sunflower, but before that, he said that a major search for the Devil's Hand was necessary first. At Lucas' words, Jude and Cordelia looked back at each other again. "Is this for real?" "Yes, I think it is." According to Lucas, the search operation for the Devil's Hand must be completed first before they begin the work for the sunflower. However, if this happens, there was a high possibility that they would miss the sunflower's blooming period. Moreover, if Jude and Cordelia do not directly go to Frost Anvil, the necessary materials for the ancestral regression technique would not be obtained. If we're in Vedafalnia, we're free to go out because my father gave us his permission, so, would the 2 of you like to go sightseeing around the city together? Lucas sweetly offered with an apologetic face. "What should we do? Let's get out of this one first." The 2 made up their minds and came up with a plan without any further discussion. "I understand your concerns well. Thank you for your kindness, Lord Lucas. It's our first time in Vedafalnia, so I'm very excited. I look forward to working with you tomorrow." When Jude and Cordelia responded with a smile instead of disappointment, Lucas became visibly relieved and then continued. "Okay, I'll be in charge and guide the 2 of you around Vedafalnia's attractions. It'll be fun, by all means. I look forward to it. My heart is already pounding." Cordelia smiled while lightly pressing on her chest, and Lucas unconsciously blushed and hastily said, Then I'll go now to prepare for tomorrow's tour. Please have a good rest." "See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow, Lord Lucas." Jude and Cordelia acted like a married couple as they warmly received Lucas' offer, and Lucas immediately left the room with a bright face. "Hey, what should we do? If we agree to this, we'll be stuck in this place." It was as Cordelia had said. If they followed Count H.R. Svelga's orders and went sightseeing around Vedafalnia, they wouldn't be able to save Lena, as well as get the sunflower. "I can't help it, we have no choice but to do that." "That, is there something we can do?" "You know, the usual solution." Jude seriously spoke as he placed his 2 hands over Cordelia's shoulder and gave her a deep and quiet look. What is it? Why are you looking like that?" "Cordelia, do you trust me?" "What is this crazy bastard?" Her words were cut off. Cordelia realized it at that moment. What the usual solution that Jude had mentioned was. Moreover, Dahlia wasn't here right now. F***CK. Cordelia cursed, and Jude took out the stationery. "I'm going on a honeymoon trip with my beloved Mr. Bayer. We'll be back in a few days, so please don't bother looking for us, okay?" A letter was found on the bed of Cordelia's room the next morning. It was obviously written by Jude and Cordelia, but by that time, the 2 had already run off.